Welcome to The Author Next Door, where hosts Angela Haas and Cassie Newell chat about the wild world of writing and publishing. Join them for weekly episodes and special monthly guests. Pull up a chair. The conversation starts now.
Welcome to episode 29. I'm Cassie Newell, and I'm here with my co-host, Angela Haas. And this month, we're doing a character study where we are looking at what it takes to create a character that readers will love. In this episode, we're talking about characters we've written and diving into our processes. All right, Angela, it's a heavy topic, and you, my friend, are the queen. I love your characters. So, first of all, who is your favorite character you've currently written? Do you have a favorite?
Yeah,
you have to pick a favorite.
I shouldn't say this, but it's my sidekick in my superhero series, and his name is Elliot S. Driver. And he was kind of a reader favorite too, an editor favorite, and he just took over for me. He was so easy to write because he's the comic relief guy.
Oh,
and
okay.
I could just picture him and how he talks and how he moves and who he is. And part of me is a little upset that, well, I won't give away that spoiler in case you haven't read my book one, but his ending, I kind of itching to rewrite, but I'm going to bring him back in a different story because I loved him so much. But he's a perfect example of a side character that takes over. So I was having so much fun writing him. And then I left my main character, the focus of the entire book. My editor was like, okay, well, we love Elliot, but you know that your protagonist is an emotionless blob. Do you understand that? I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Oh, really? Okay, I guess I got get on her.
Oh, I love that.
So, yeah, he's my favorite.
I think
what about you?
Every writer has that editor that's like, okay, on your secondary character, they are secondary, right? I've had that happen too.
Yeah, she's like, you've got Elliot nailed. We love him, but what about your protagonist's emotional wound? And I was like, oh, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess I better do that.
Whoa, so fun. Whoa, so fun.
Yeah. Who's your favorite that you've written?
I think she's my favorite because she was my OG for writing and kicked it all off. And that's Willow Warrington. She was my main character in my series, the Unwanted series, and starts off with book 1 in Magic. And the reason I wrote her, it was really interesting at the time. Now, it was published in 2016. You know, to me, there wasn't a lot of female characters that could rescue not only themselves, but the male interest as well. That was my total purpose for her.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, she, as we talked in a previous episode, episode 27, she has some breakdown moments, right? Things aren't going well. She has a fight with her love interest because he's basically ghosted her after a very traumatic event that he's dealing with, which you don't ghost people. You need to talk and communicate. So yeah, I wanted this female to represent a number of different things. And I think I pulled it off pretty well. Also with growing up in high school, your friends that you think are your rock in high school do not always carry over into adulthood. So I represent that also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think she's like always going to be like my OG favorite. And by the way, fun little Easter egg. I am a huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan.
Of course, Abby.
And that's where Willow's name comes because she's also a Wiccan. She's the Wiccan queen. And so, yeah, that's where her name comes from. So that's always fun. People are like, oh, you like Buffy? I'm like, yes, I did. Huge Buffy fan. I even have the comic books. So, yeah, loved Buffy. But yeah, that's my favorite.
Awesome. That is so awesome. Yeah, I like my side characters better. They're a little easier. Even in the romance, the side characters took over, and now they're going to get their own holiday romance. And
But they
so it's
should,
like,
because they're awesome. And even I was like, I would read that.
I don't know why the side
Maybe I shouldn't be
characters.
one of your alpha readers. I'm awful. I'm like, I want to read that.
No, I want you to. That's why you should be my only alpha reader. Um, no, I think I wonder why it's so easier to write side characters. I think there's not as much pressure on them, and so
Yeah.
for me, they just sort of come out. And I think sometimes when I am not thinking about how perfect I need to make them because they're a sidekick, I just write with abandon. And then there's so much more that goes into writing the protagonists or the leads
Yeah.
that I kind of write the sides first and then go back and layer in.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
because
an interesting process.
I just had to, especially Stella Walsh, who is my first superhero character in First Strike, I had to just make her two-dimensional to get through it
Mm.
because the side characters were easy. I created Gary, my emotional robot. I wanted him to have just this really basic Earth name, but he is, and the sci-fi bros would not agree with me, but I just kind of was like, well, we're going to download emotion like updates for him. And so he's going to be a little more emotional. And I don't know. He was so much fun to write because he also is the perfect like counter character to my Phineas Rex, who's the captain. And I had so much fun creating them. But that's because my strength as a writer and my Clifton strengths, that's the test we refer to for those of us maybe joining late. It's a Gallup personality test, and it helps you as an author because it shows you where your strengths and where some of your not so strengths. I don't like to call them weaknesses because we make it all work for us. But my number one strength is strategic, which means I'm a problem solver, which means that I'm constantly just putting the plot together as a puzzle piece. Now, my number two strength is individualization, and that helps me create characters. But all my emotion strengths are way at the bottom, and that's
interesting.
I wish I would have known that as I was fighting myself writing First Strike because I really struggled with the emotional depth of Stella, even though I could see her and I knew who she was. She's a surgeon, so she has sort of a rigidness about her personality and a God complex, and I could see all that, but I had trouble bringing her emotion through.
Interesting.
Whereas, like, I was just having a ball. Now, when I was with the side characters, I was having a ball writing the side characters. Now, with Rachel Kicklater, who was the main character of my romance, that was a little easier because I could weave some of my own experiences into hers. We've all had a terrible breakup.
Right.
We've all had an ex that was awful. And I could just be like, well, I really love potatoes, so does Rachel, you know? So, and those are like I'm not dealing with superhero powers. I was just like, what is she like? What is she not like? How does she talk? She was easier. What about you? What are have you ever had a character that just was like challenging you to write? And how did you fight through that?
No, challenging wise. I mean, so speaking of Clifton strengths, my number one is relator. So characters come pretty natural to me. And I can mimic character personalities super easy once I'm in their head. Like it just speaks to me. I know that sounds odd when writers say, oh, the character led me, but it's like you just know them so well. It helps to write them. I think I had more of a hard time with my recent work in progress for my female character, more so because she is a director at a company and she's also experienced some equality issues, and there's a romance at play. There's a lot of things that are going on, and I just didn't want her to come off as a bitch because I'm in a day job that's very demanding and leadership oriented, and you have to be really cognizant of being human, although being direct, which males get away with. But for females, it's a little different to be assertive and yet still kind. So that was a little bit of a struggle. Although my editor said I did fabulous, so I felt really good
Yeah,
about
of
it. But
course.
there were points of that were hard because it was interesting too, because I also decided from my alpha reader not to go back and forth between my main female character
Mm,
and the male. So it's just her point of view all the way through.
interesting. Okay.
Well, and that was part of your advice because
Yeah,
it was such a strong theme. With him in there, she easily became what I didn't want her to become, because
right.
that's how you see it through his eyes or through other male eyes. And I was like, no, I can't have that. It's not how I want that to work. So I don't know. There's some strategic elements, I think, in creating your characters and how their voices are saying. How do you start, though, with your characters? Is it a visual thing? Is it a voice thing? Is it a personality thing? I mean, you even said you started off with your side characters first. Like, how does that come to you?
I first have to like create an image somewhere, whether
Mm,
it's finding something similar on Pinterest. I have to figure out what they look like
see
so
them.
then I can start to see how they might move and talk. And then I figure out what their Myers-Briggs personality is
Right.
because we've talked about this, but I do a lot of trainings with that and I understand what those parts of your personality,
How you
how those
respond.
people like respond to things, how they react. Are they introverted? Are they extroverted? Because that's going to
Mhm,
tell me a lot about how they react to each other and
mhm.
things that happen to them. I always try to figure out what their little quirks are. Do they collect something weird? Do they not weird? I mean,
Yeah.
my husband loves to collect garden gnomes. That's not a weird thing, but it's a little quirky,
Yeah.
for a man
Not
who
everybody does, right?
is an
Yeah.
accounting major. So like
Yeah.
do they have some little habit? My main hunky alpha male Tom Hardy inspired character from First Strike, he cracks his knuckles when he's nervous because that's the only way you see his shell break is it's like a release for him and he's
Oh,
cracking his
wow.
knuckles. So Stella hears his knuckles crack and knows it's him and doesn't see him. So
Yeah.
is there a quirk? Is there something? Do they bite their nails? Do they bite their lip when they're nervous? Do they tap their knee? And then that also gives me like when Scout was nervous in Seconds to Oblivion, she took her shoes off. It was a freeing thing for her. She had to take her shoes off. And so that you knew when you saw her shoes were off that she was anxious about
Mm,
something. And then that I saw there's a lot of planning. I don't just sit and write them. I have to like make storyboards for who they are and
really?
figure out their personalities and
That's
see what
such
they
a
look like.
planning thing.
I know I'm more of a planner now. What about you? How do you start when you just have an idea?
Yeah,
Do
I
you
have an
do you have a
idea.
name first? Like the
Yeah,
name I have
names
to have
drive me.
first. Yeah.
I love
Mhm.
names. Names drive me. I don't always know the last names up front, but I'll know like the first names usually. So for Sweetheart Scones and Stories, which was brand new adventure for me last summer, when I sat down and I was just on my iPad kind of plotting it out, and I was like, I need 4 best friends. 2 of them are going to be twins. Fraternal twins. I just was like, that's how it's going to be. And I kind of it just started developing for me. I knew the first name I wanted was Callie. I had a friend who had a baby and named her daughter Callie, and I just always thought it was pretty. And then I was like starting to kind of develop their personalities with the tropes. I just kind of wrote the tropes across, and I was like, okay, I really want this female to be super strong. And to me, Brittany was just a really strong, hearty name. And I wanted Izzy to be fun and flirty. Like, as I've said, I love found families and this kind of archetype. So I had these personalities that work well together, balance each other out. Like, Callie is the heart, of this group. And then you've got Brittany, who's kind of a ball buster and creative type and a romantic at heart, although she won't show it because she's had
Mhm.
some divorce and other things in her life. And then Izzy, I wanted her to be fun and flirty and just girl boss extraordinaire, which worked out great. And then Nick, I just wanted her to be the opposite of Izzy as a sister. So she's a little bit more introverted, although she's a girl boss too. So there's some similarities, but I wanted them to be a little different. And it was so fun with the narrators because I think they followed, in the written words, because Izzy's voice is higher and Nick's voice is lower and more introspective. And it's really interesting to see how other people interpret it. But for me, it's names, personalities, tropes. And then I just kind of dive in from there. I am very visual, so I cast. That's like some of the first things I do is really casting, to see them. Sometimes I'm casting actors, sometimes I'm casting characters from other shows. And I'm like, okay, this is how they're going to be like, except this. Because I always like having my own twists because, well, I'm that person.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, I tend to do it like that. And it's fun because right now I'm in the throes of the next series and it's just continuing on. So like now I'm building this like family tree of, okay, this and their couples and then this and their couples, like, because I'm just trying to integrate everybody you've met in some form of fashion, and while I'm introducing new characters as well and growing this town. So the story Bible is huge and the tree is just growing. But I also really wanted Southern names. So I was very cognizant of that, especially for the male characters as well. I wanted strong, at the point, Southern names. Macon is a strong Southern name. There's a town in Georgia called Macon. And it was interesting because one of my alpha readers was like, how do you pronounce his name? She lives in Canada.
Oh,
And I was like, it's bacon, but with an M. Because she
that's
was like,
funny.
Macon? Like she just didn't know, and I was like, bacon, but with an M. Macon. She's like, okay. But like Holt is very Texan. Like I just
Yeah.
try to appease where their regions are set too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I totally pictured Jessica Chastain, that actress, as Stella from First Strike. And then I'd watch all her movies so
Mm.
that I could memorize her face looks like when she's smiling. I don't know, it was helped me to describe her a little bit better. But
Yeah, that's
yeah,
awesome.
the names and that's all so important. And then I mean, have you ever had a character sort of change as you are writing them? Like you started out and then you're like, you know what? No, they're like this. Sometimes I have
Yeah.
to get to know my characters. Like I start
Yeah, I
out with
have
a
to write to
vision
get to know them. I
and
love
then I'm
doing
like,
dialogue
yeah.
exercises back and forth. So in my young adult fantasy, I have a guardian group and the fellas, if you will. So Ridian, Tullen, Quinn, and Cross. And Cross is a behemoth of a man, and he's very strong-willed, and he's kind of the muscle. Not that none of them aren't muscle, but he's like the tank kind of guy. And I wanted him to be super, super strong and kind of gruff and kind of, intimidating, the intimidator out of the group.
Yeah.
And God, he was a side character that took over for me quite a bit that we are talking about. But I had to have dialogue moments just with the four of them, without the head of the Guardians in there, just to see how they interact. So it's almost like play acting, right? So
Right.
I'm verbally talking as Ridian because I had that voice down, but I needed to have the smart ass comments and hitbacks from Cross. And then I needed Tullen, who's this educated, like the book guy, and then Quinn, who's the medic, the gamer. Like, how would they talk back, So I had to like just practice a little bit. I know writers hate the idea of practicing and it not being in your prose, but it helps. And I just took time to practice that and how they would respond to each other. For the
Yeah.
females, it came much more naturally to me. But for the males in that group, and it was my first foray of being published for that, I wanted to get them right.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
I'm always more challenged to write my female characters, and I don't know why. And I think, again, I think there's more pressure to make them so much more likable because the articles
Yeah.
I've read and I've gotten feedback from, readers were much harder on female characters. We're not as forgiving of their choices. And that's a shame, but I've also found myself doing the same thing. Like there's some books that I've read where like, ugh, I hate the woman, but I love the man. And I'm like, oh no,
Yeah.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And it's like, why are we so tough on our female characters? But I feel pressure to have the females like and really
Yeah.
look at their choices and make sure they're not making choices that are going to irritate the reader. I want them to make sure that they're a good friend, and because really there's so much that has come out, and I don't think we realized it as we were watching it when it was first on in the 90s about how Carrie Bradshaw is actually the villain of Sex and the City. There could be arguments for or against this, but if you rewatch now, she's actually a horrible friend. And
Yeah.
she actually is a horrible girlfriend sometimes.
Yeah.
And her choices are terrible. And I think I'm like, you know what? What would Carrie Bradshaw do? And if it's this, then I'm going to write the opposite.
I love it. I love it. Well, that leads me to this question. Do you need to like your characters to write them?
I think so, at least my mains. I mean, but then there's so many times when my villains I actually started liking. And I'm like, yeah, you got to make them a little bit more villainy then, because if you like them too much, then the reader's going to root for them. And we all want to root for some villains. Sometimes they just have to be bad villains. But I
Yeah.
think I have to like all my characters, or else if I'm not writing them passionately and I enjoy it and like them,
Yeah.
then something's going to come through and it's going to fall flat.
So in testing this, so Willow has two best friends, Lucy and Emily. And one of them becomes a turncoat on her at the end of the series. And that was really hard to write because I had to give her a reason to hate Willow, right? Even though this has been her best friend for years, to hate her so much that she wants to kill her or be part of a conspiracy to kill her and maintain that. And yeah, I hated her. I hated her so much, but she had such a purpose to the plot. And it was important, and I had to stay true to that the whole time. And it was hard sometimes to write her because I really didn't like her. And I think part of it too was my adult mother coming out like, where is her mother? Of course, she doesn't have one,
Right.
Where's her father? Where is her best friends like smacking her over the head going, what the hell is wrong? Wake up. And I do have those moments for Willow and her, but it's too late because Emily's just kind of agreed to do what she needs to do for Lucy. So it was difficult. It was really hard for me. And I definitely enjoy writing romance to the effect of having fun, quirky characters, not necessarily characters you hate, but you just kind of put up with, like the crazy matchmaker lady. It's always around trying to coupleize everyone and all the things. But yeah, there's definitely a difference, I think, in the type of genre you write too. So I don't know. I didn't like her, but it had to be done.
Yeah. And what advice would you give authors who are starting out and trying to develop good characters? I think for me, you have to first start with what we talked about in our first episode of this month is what are your favorite characters and why? Why do you identify with these characters? Why do you like them? What is it about them that makes them so loved? And then see if you can translate that. And, we always recycling things. There is such a thing as a character archetype. and you can look up the character archetypes and learn about the
Yeah.
mentor in fantasy, action, adventure. And I think even in romance, there's always the best friends. And you can start building a world around your main character. And then, how does the world around them make your character do this or that? And they always have to be making a choice in every scene. And there should be like the conflict, choice, and consequences. That's from Jay Thorne's 3-story method. But they do have to always make a choice and they should face some consequences. And if you can start there and the basics, do you want their names to mean something or is it just a name? I like having interesting last names that aren't just so cookie cutter, and think about their quirks. What little habits do they have? Do they have a bad habit that you can use to make them a little more three-dimensional, can come into the story? Those are some things I think you can do to start just from scratch writing characters. What's your advice? Like if you're coaching someone who's saying, I don't know where to start with my characters.
Yeah.
Where do you
Well,
start?
if they don't know where to start with their characters, but they have an idea of the plot. So it's one of two things, right? You're either developing your characters and then fitting the plot, or you have a plot, usually when you're starting out, and you're adding characters to it, right? Because story is characters, in my opinion, point blank, period. Like it's characters, it's the human experience and how they make decisions to move through the plot that you've created. So it would be, if you had a specific plot, what does the character need to decide for the next plot point? Like what drives that? I had this really fun client where we were developing their character arc, which I think in the beginning, you just need to know where they're starting. And then as you're writing, you can make those decisions and watch them grow, right? And her point was she knew where they were starting at this goalpost at the very beginning, but she didn't know where their arc should end. And this was so fun, and it worked a couple of times now, and I find myself using it because I think it's really simple. I do love the emotion thesaurus. It's fabulous,
Yes.
but this is another way to go about it. So pick an adjective of your character of where the main personality point. Let's say they're stubborn, for example. Go to the thesaurus and find the antonym, stubborn. So they're going to be open-minded at the end. Some type of open-mindedness at the end of the plot. And you've got to show them stop being as stubborn in their decisions, allowing other people to interact with those decisions. Maybe they're alone and stubborn and now they're more open-minded and have people around them. That is a character arc, and that helps to start building that personality. So if you can make goalposts for your main characters, then that will help drive that, especially if you're not a planner, and she wasn't. She's more of a pantser. To write and discover, that will really help you. So if you can just give your characters one adjective, one of their main adjectives, you can certainly add more because that's how you get complex characters, and drive them to their antonym, which is usually a more positive growth outcome. Unless you're writing an anti-hero, it works the exact same way. Do that for the goalposts. It's super helpful. I did that actually in my work in progress for my novel, The Pink Tax, of where she stood on her ideas about work, life, and love. And so that was really fun. And I think if you can connect those dots as you're writing, your readers feel really satisfied. Even what's in your head and they don't know that, they will interpret it the right way every time. Every time.
That's a great method. And I think that could be really helpful for people who are a little stuck. I also try to pick out what's the one thing they have to get over, but I like to pick an overarching theme for my characters. And for the superhero ones, like First Strike, Stella, the theme of that was you're stronger together. You don't have to do it alone. Her whole journey was trusting her team because she's a surgeon. And so she's used to kind of calling the shots, making the decisions, even though she has a team, but she's upended from her team on Earth and brought to a new team. And then it's her trusting those
Right.
around her and embracing the found family. So, but then the opposite was true for Scout in book 2.
Mm,
She was so codependent on everyone around her. She had to trust that she could do it by herself.
right.
She has the strength inside her by herself. And for the romance, my theme for my plus one was all about how does trauma from your past relationships really impact you and how love, the love of a good person, can get you through that. So
Mm,
picking those themes and like those are the issues I wanted to tackle. And specifically in my plus one equals you, I tackled the issue of men can be abused too.
mm-hmm.
We always hear about battered women syndrome, but there is something, it's not battered men syndrome, but it's the emotional abuse that men can sustain in relationships and how they stuff it down, don't ask
Mm-hmm.
for help, and don't talk
Don't
about it.
address it.
So
Yeah.
that was the theme. And I built Cameron around someone who had survived a really abusive ex. And what does it look like for him to be able to love again? So I like picking those themes. And then that's sort of like, well, here's what my character would do based on this theme.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
those are kind of how I
The
guide
theme and
that.
their personality around that. Like I did the
Exactly.
same thing with Jackson. So Jackson in the pink tax, I wanted the juxtaposition of somebody fighting for equality being male versus being
Mm-hmm.
female for her.
Right.
And I wanted this mature, kind of complex male that's still fun and challenging and kind of a goofball, but yet super supportive out of nowhere. And she never had that from a male
Right.
figure. And so the other piece to that is, at one point his mom was a single widowed mom
Mm-hmm.
and he saw the inequality of that. So I think you have to have backgrounds for those things, and also bring them into your writing, like in the dialogue, in a flashback, whatever. Probably not a flashback. Editors are probably screaming at me, but definitely in the dialogue and how they respond to things with their
Mm-hmm.
backgrounds and personalities. I'm one of those people, I'll be really honest. I do not do huge pages of background, the colors they like, this or that.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
do
not like
that.
that either.
I do a quick physical appearance, quick background, quick hobby, quick where did they come from, a little bit about their family, and then I roll. And usually those things are kind of coming out as I'm writing. Like I said, practice and just kind of doing the dialogue. My first drafts often look a little bit more like a screenplay anyway. I'm pretty dialogue heavy, and that's how I find out their personalities. But yeah, especially in a novel, not so much in short, but maybe sometimes. It just depends when I'm stuck. But yeah, I think you have to challenge yourself too as to why a character is acting a certain way and then build it into their background. But don't let the reader guess what that is. It needs to be clear to the reader why they are struggling or why they are helping or why they are supporting at some point in your book. It just can't be out of the blue because otherwise it becomes two-dimensional.
Yeah. Well, and then it makes the reader not trust you. If you
Yeah.
have these surprise things that happen. And that's why I don't do those character sheets too, that you can find them online and maybe they're helpful to some. It's
Yeah.
just, what are their political beliefs? What is
Yeah.
their religion? What is their favorite color? Now, if those details are pertinent to your story,
Yep.
that's great. But if your character's favorite color has no bearing on the plot or their development, we don't need those details.
No.
Sometimes those details bog us down, and then if it's too much for the reader to sort through,
Yeah.
then it feels like they are reading a character sheet and not like something that they can visualize as a real person.
Yeah. It needs
So,
to be moving. It needs to be actionable.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Don't lecture me.
right.
I will get right out of that book.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to be lectured. I want to live it.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
all
Awesome.
right.
Cool
Any
discussion.
personal updates for you? Like, what's going
I
on here?
just really trying to write my holiday romance, which I think is going to be called The Bodyguard Clause, like
Oh,
Santa Claus.
I love it. I hadn't heard that yet. You
That's
heard
the
it
new
here
title.
first.
Yeah.
The bodyguard clause. I
Sort of
love that.
falling in love with it's I guess you're supposed to have a holiday romance in your arsenal as a romance author. So this will be my holiday romance. So
Is that what
just
I'm doing
started
too? My holiday
outlining
romance?
but there's a bodyguard twist in it. So
I
yeah,
love
that's
it.
mine.
So I should be writing Midnight Kiss Countdown and Cupid's Sweet Conspiracy.
Nice.
Those are my next two in my arsenal this summer. And I need to
Fantastic.
knock out.
Here we go.
Yeah. And that
We
will
can do it.
complete the Holiday Matchmaker series in my little town. So I'm
That's
super
great.
excited about those two. I
Those
know,
are
yeah, I'm still fiddling with who's going to be in the third book. This is funny. So I am actually going to have these narrated again
nice.
with audiobooks, and I already have that scheduled. And the female narrator said something in a podcast we were on for the first series where she was a little jealous of the male narrator because he got to do all these different accents. Because I had somebody from Texas and then somebody from Georgia. And then, I was kind of all over with my males. And she was kind of in Georgia, she was just in Georgia. And I thought, you know what? I could do something a little different for book 3.
Right.
I could play with that. So I'm kind of fiddling with the idea of somebody having a completely different accent.
That's cool. I love it.
So I don't know.
That.
We'll see how that works out. But yeah, so I'm going to try to finish writing all my holidays this summer, which is kind of nice, cool me down mentally in the heat of the summer. And then, yeah, I'm going to take some time off.
Good.
From writing for a little bit. And it's just going to be editing and enjoying, I think.
Good. Yes.
My goal is to take November and December off.
Oh, wow.
We'll see if that works.
I'll see if you can do that.
Well, if I write, it will be for complete joy without pressure of timeline.
Sure.
That's kind of where my head is.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I don't want to have a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not as productive at the end of the year either.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not. And every year I push myself. I'm miserable. I'm like, I'm just not going to do that. I don't think. So.
I'm rooting for you. But
you're like, I'm not stopping.
Well, I haven't cranked out as much as you. So, yeah, I'm going to try to get 2 out this year. Well, 3, and then we'll see what happens.
Well, wait, you already have 1 out?
Yeah. So
and you
2
just
more.
Finished 2?
Yeah. So then the 3rd.
Oh, yeah.
But then I have a whole new series to start. But we'll talk about that later. Okay.
Table
Here
topics.
it is.
Okay.
Would you rather be an American Idol judge or a Supreme Court justice?
What? Would I rather be a Supreme Court justice or an American Idol judge? Well, the longevity of being a Supreme Court justice is probably like job security.
Right.
Versus an American Idol judge. I don't know. I love music so much. That could be fun, but I don't feel like that's my I don't think being a judge is my background either. I don't think I would enjoy either one of those. But if I was forced to, I guess I don't know. Idol? I feel like Ginsburg is like throwing lightning at me right now.
Well,
I don't know. I don't feel I have a background for it.
Just imagining if you were, I would love to know the process, but when you're a Supreme Court justice, there's a lot of pressure on you you're always going to have the wrong answer for someone,
of course.
But really I'm not saying that they are all like this. I'm just saying the purpose of it is to be objective, to really weigh each case against the Constitution. I think because each case is so different, your job would be just like so incredible. So I would probably pick that, but I also almost went into a career of criminal justice. So I'm kind of fascinated with that side anyway.
Yeah.
So, and they're not all criminal cases, but it's just like I imagine some of the things that land on their desk, you're just like, really? God.
Yeah, I think I would have a lot more fun as an idol
Oh, of course.
judge.
Yeah. No, that would
But
be fun. But I think it would be interesting to be a Supreme Court justice. So anyway,
oh my gosh.
it's all
Yeah,
interesting.
what a combo.
Yeah, I know. Who writes these questions?
Yeah, what a combo there. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to give us a review, a rating, wherever you listen to the podcast. It really helps us out with visibility. Next week, we're talking with Nick Thacker about what it's like for him to write from a female point of view and what advice he has for women writing male characters. This is going to be so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Till then, keep writing, keep doing. Bye.
Thanks for joining today's episode of The Author Next Door. Be sure to like, follow, and tell us your thoughts of this week's episode. Angela and Cassie would love to hear from you.